This is All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces.
Hi, my name is Cindy Mariner. I'm the founder of Breathing Spaces. Welcome to another episode of All Things Caregiving. I'm here today with my co-host Cindy Gum,
Hi.
and we are really excited today to have another team member from Breathing Spaces, Anthony Metten. Anthony is part of our team. He hosts breathwork for us, positive intelligence, and is also a co-host with me on our care circles once a month. Anthony is an acclaimed coach, trainer, speaker, and I cannot speak more highly of this man. I am so grateful that you're here with us today, Anthony. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and welcome to welcome. Good morning to the two of you. This is fun. I haven't done an interview on a podcast in a bit, so kind of fun to be back.
Good, good. We're glad you're here. So you, as I previously mentioned, you are co-hosting with me our care circles. We do those online for folks once a month
Mhm.
on Tuesdays, and you've had the opportunity to experience a number of different people in a number of different situations. So we've got a caregiving audience here today that's glued to the set. What would you like to share today or discuss?
Yeah, just lately I have come up with a topic that I can't imagine would be discussed that often in this kind of environment, but I think is a very fruitful discussion to have, and that's boundaries.
Mm.
And the reason for that is as caregivers, of which we're all guilty, and I say that with a big heart, oftentimes we can forget ourselves. We can suffer in silence and judge why we're not able to do more or give more. All valuable emotions and feelings to have when you're in a caregiving situation. And some might argue that to draw boundaries, to make sure you take care of yourself while you're in a caregiving situation might be selfish, might be self-centered, um, could be seen as, only doing the minimum. But as human beings, I have found, especially if you're a caregiver and you're that type of person, you can expect so much more of yourself than is realistic. And what ensues is bad feelings, um, sometimes broken relationships, arguments, hurt feelings, and rightfully so, because you weren't clear about boundaries from the very beginning. You just went all in, which, again, kudos to all of us for being that open and vulnerable to be there for others. But again, I just think the idea of boundaries and needing to take care of yourself and what that looks like as a caregiver is a rich topic to discuss. What do you think?
Mhm. I absolutely agree with you. Excuse me. There's no question that I think that you get really wrapped up in your role of caregiving and you lose those boundaries. And then you get all sorts of emotions coming up around that. Once you've lost that, anger, depression, all sorts of things start coming up, and then you get the swirl.
Hmm.
That happens so easily, so
Hmm.
easily.
Yeah, and what I find is by the time you do insert some boundaries, it's a reaction,
Hmm.
and the reaction is never a positive one,
Right.
right? And now that's when the damaged relationships, arguments, hurt feelings, and all that comes into play. Because if you would have inserted boundaries from the beginning, people would know what to expect of you. You would know what you needed to give, and it could continue on. And if you didn't insert boundaries at the very beginning, and you noticed that you're out of balance and you need to start taking care of yourself a little bit, which means you need to back off, and you used, say, the dimmer switch approach, yeah, then you can slowly interject and suggest that, you need to take a couple days off or you need to be here, whatever it happens to be. And you can, slowly turn that dimmer switch down. But what I find is we don't allow ourselves to do that. We fight ourselves. We think that, we're, suck it up, buttercup, if you will. We judge ourselves, and so we hold on as long as we can, and then we can't, and we snap,
Mhm.
and we insert boundaries, and then the repair work needs to be done, and all the noise that goes with that.
Say, Anthony, I have a question about that because I agree thoroughly about the boundaries, but I think oftentimes couples, that have been very independent by nature and have very independent relationship, all of a sudden one is perhaps dependent on this other person. That is an extreme challenge for people unless they have a way of communicating what it is I want and need. And hopefully they are able to, because you have to have cognitive and executive function to do that.
Mhm.
But what do you think of the idea of someone, a caregiver and a care receiver setting a time once a week to let's talk? And what about, what do they need? What is working and what's not working?
Mhm.
Because so often they've never communicated in this role before where one is dependent.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The longer I'm in the business that I'm in, the more I find that overall we're just not very good communicators, and
Yeah, it's a miracle we do as well as we do.
communication can be really difficult.
Yeah,
Um, it's sometimes just starting the conversation because you anticipate what the other person's reaction is going to be.
yeah,
To find the right time, the right setting, the right mood, the right day of the week, the right time of the day, I mean, just, and again, if we haven't practiced healthy, open communication prior to that, again, you're trying to start something new. So it's herky jerky at best. I don't know. Am I answering your question?
well, I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions, for caregivers, how to really express these concerns, that come up, what isn't working, what is working, whatever. How do they just initiate, just to get started, a baby step maybe, when they notice that communication has fallen apart, boundaries are being broken? What's the first baby step they could take?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious piece that comes to mind is to test the waters with a lukewarm topic and see how that lands. Um,
Yeah,
my
that's good.
experience with that though is it's not going to go as well as you hoped it would, because you hoped it would go smoothly enough where you then could continue the conversation and add in a little more, go a little deeper, if you will. But it doesn't go as you hoped, and so you tend to shut it down because to get it to that next level where you need to be, you need to kind of cross the boundary, cross the line, if you will, and have a little shock to no, this is important. We need to talk.
Yeah.
And that is so very difficult.
Well, and maybe in that light, you need to have a conversation with yourself before you go into this conversation with the one that you're caring for, right?
Yeah. And here's a piece that goes right along with this. That this is a lifelong deal, but I find that most people don't know themselves very well. And if I just left that statement alone, you might scratch your head and go, well, and maybe I'm sure a lot of people would actually argue it. But I'm somebody who has spent the last 18 years or so, 5 years in a master's degree program in counseling psychology, 18 years now as a coach and a speaker, um, you know, spiritual retreats, and I just anything I could to really kind of get in and understand myself. And every day I'm learning more and more and more. And I tell you, as much as I've learned about myself in the last year, boy, I wish I could have had that year over year. But it builds upon itself, if you will. And sometimes you have to, Cindy, to get back to your question, sometimes you need to have the conversation with yourself first. and understand exactly what's going on with you before you can, have that conversation with your loved one or with the person you're taking care of, um, and really be able to explain yourself. And I can go much deeper on that if you want, but that again, I think you need to have the conversation with yourself first and truly take some time to understand yourself because we are complicated. And again, our psyche oftentimes doesn't allow us to admit when we're tired or weak or need a rest or need something for ourselves.
What are the questions a caregiver might ask themselves if they want to work on that?
Right.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. One of the biggest revelations I made in one fell swoop was to learn about HSP, highly sensitive person. They're the mothership, if you will, of the website for that is hsperson.com, henrysamperson.com, where you can take an assessment and whatnot and find out about that. But 15 to 20% of the population is, and if you are, you will learn a lot about why you're fatigued at times, why you're feeling overwhelmed, why you feel emotionally burdened, and so on. Now, look, if you are an HSP and you're discovering that, great, man, you're going to learn a lot. If you go to that site and you take the assessment and you're not an HSP, well, then you've also learned something, right?
Oh,
But this
great.
is this is just self-discovery at its best. From the HSP, assessment, you can understand your sleeping habits more, your fatigue levels more. And from your fatigue comes your emotions. Hey, when I'm well rested, the sun is shining, and it's a beautiful day out, even if it's storming, raining, right? If I'm tired, no matter how beautiful the day is, it's storming inside my head.
Good point.
Wow. And so is that did you say hsp.com?
No, HS person. So HSPERSON.com.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
clarifying that. Yeah. HSPERSON.com.
Boy, that could be very, if approximately 50% of us are
Well,
more
15 to
sensitive,
20%.
yeah,
15 to
that
20%.
could be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just to give you a little snapshot, it's 15 to 20%, both male and female, and in over 100 different species. So it's animals as well. And I can attest to that because my cat is an HSP. But anyways, I
There
digress.
you go.
This is a really helpful point for people to go to because I was thinking about, the conversation, initiating that conversation with your loved one. If you don't know where you're coming from, are you having this dialogue because you want to win something out of this conversation? Or are you doing this because you really are truly, genuinely trying to find a solution so that there's balance created?
Yeah.
We all have to step back away from the dance floor a little bit to understand what's going on there.
Yeah. And I'll give you this, that we all need an ear. We all need somebody we can lean on, to talk it through, to be able to express what we're feeling openly without the risk of being judged. And if you have somebody like that in your life, great. Use them, lean on them because you need it. If you don't have somebody in your life like that, I would say look for one, try to find it. Maybe for some people that is a really difficult thing. They can't imagine who that person might be, but you'll never know unless you try.
Right.
But we all need that sounding board where we can just unload sometimes, and get it off our chest. And with some appropriate feedback, we can get a better understanding of ourselves going forward.
And that's one of the reasons we created those care circles online. You've got a group of people you've never met before, but you can come to the table and talk about things that are going on. And nobody's judging you in that room. Nobody's
Mhm.
judging you.
Well, not only that, but you have that peer group that understands because they have a shared experience.
Mhm.
And so there's a real safety factor there. Also, as a plug for the journaling people that I have in my journaling groups,
Right.
The journal has been my best friend really for a long, long time. And it's not an either or, it's an and.
Yes.
But being able to really look within, Anthony, and know yourself, I think is key and really important. However you do it, however we get to know not only who we are, but who we are in relationship to the one we're caring for, because everything shifts in a caregiver relationship. Everything, it's a game changer. So
Yeah. And Cindy, I just want to add this one last piece because you bring up something really important, journaling. They say magic happens when pen hits paper. And I 100% believe that. And there's all kinds of different ways you can journal. And I think journaling is probably next to meditation, it's one of the best things we can do for ourselves. But for anybody out there who's tried journaling and it doesn't work for them, I want to share this with you. Um, I have tried for years and every different idea about journaling. And Cindy, you might say, well, join my group. I'll change that. It's never worked for me. And the thing is, when early on, when I tried and it wasn't working, and I would try again and it wouldn't work, I would, judge myself, right? Well, this is good, right? This is proven scientific, that this helps, but it wasn't working for me. And my point is, if something isn't working for you, then go find something that
yeah,
is.
there's a lot out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because
I
beating
agree.
yourself up
Yep.
over you should, if you, as they say, you should on yourself, it's not going to help anything. That's that aware part. Be aware of who you are and what works for you.
And your options. You have to be willing to look at options and do a little digging. So you have to develop curiosity along with everything else, but find something that works, is what I'm hearing us both
Be
say.
willing to try.
Yeah.
Go try a bunch of stuff and figure
Yep.
out what does work. But
Yeah.
don't write it off, no pun intended, until you try.
Exactly. Well, and not, no caregiving situation is exactly the same. There's
No.
always a different nuance in everything out there, but you have to be willing to open your mind, open your heart, and look at this in a different way, because you are not going to engineer the solution to this problem. You cannot just do that. You need to be willing to be open and explore different avenues. So you're both exactly right there.
Yeah, and here's a scuba diving analogy. You always dive with a partner. And if your partner ever starts to struggle in a drowning situation, if you will, you help them until you can't.
Mhm.
And then you have to walk away, because if you do stick around regardless, you're both going to drown.
Right.
And
Good
if you're
analogy.
both going to drown, no good will come from it.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, as a caregiver, I think caregivers can relate to that feeling too. I can remember thinking, this is taking me down. So I think that brings up a longer and more in-depth conversation, but something I think most caregivers are aware of feeling.
Right. Which again, why I started with boundaries and knowing yourself.
Yep.
You need to know your limits.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Otherwise,
Anthony.
you're going to be the one who needs a caregiver.
Exactly. You have to be willing to raise your hand and open your heart and take a different path. You
Be
can't do this
vulnerable.
alone. You cannot do this alone, folks. There's no
Yeah.
question about that. Yeah. Well, Anthony, I love this. We would love to have you back on again. Come
Thank you.
join us again.
I'd be honored.
Oh, this is great. Listen, please, everyone out there, we'll put up the links to the website that Anthony has offerings for on our website. It has been an absolute pleasure, Anthony, as always, to be with you here today. And Cindy, you as well. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing everyone again on another episode of All Things Caregiving. Don't forget to take care of yourself, folks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Be well.
This has been All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces.